I mean, we don't go, I mean, I've been doing board, county, commerce. I'm not attached to friendly. Chairman's dashboard. Oh, and so, but John and Matt are really trying to.
Okay, so we should, he's talking right now.
Yeah, and it would come through the speaker of your laptop, or if you're using like headsets, like a app, AirPods or something. But you need another microphone.
No, like, it'll come.
And so I've got full.
Right, like, if- so we're
I'm
gonna
just
be-
using
yeah.
that remote or
There we go.
when they're doing this from a laptop, right? So, yeah, so
Yeah.
the internal speakers would pick up their sound.
Not
like-
Okay, I'm just making sure you should hear it.
I don't know, if that's what you wanna do.
Hi, welcome. Yeah. Oh, I know, I like to sit on these sides. Hey, Mike, can you test your audio for us? We can make sure we hear you.
And so, yeah, now. But I work with them. And all that knowledge. What the drug represents.
How are you? We were supposed to park in the parking garage.
Correct.
You're saying, it's a parking lot. Where's the lot? Down the lot. It was way before you went there. It's the parking garage. You are.
And that one committee named Mike.
Yeah, no one.
And then, I mean, one year, I heard that. 2 years ago, and then I finally.
This is Mike Polis. Can you hear me okay?
To talk to the chairman, just said.
Well, my last. Yes.
So, and they're gonna be. It's always been so much. Chairman, he said, "One chair." You're like, okay.
Hybrid.
Yeah.
He's
It's done.
He was. That sucker a massive.
Yeah.
All right, everybody just don't go free.
Well, you know, I was.
He just asked him. Okay, he was. I saw the sound moving, but he wasn't hearing it.
Yeah. Sound coming up. Yeah, it's on in here, because if I turn on one of those microphones, it'll play.
But I'm like.
Yeah.
That would have to be something yeah, that would be the one. So see, if I cut this microphone off, there's sound coming in through here, so it'd have to be on the.
Rachel, where are you? You're still not hearing.
Maybe need like a headset or maybe like AirPods or something with a microphone attached to it, because if it's saying they're talking, it should play through here, because it's all coming through the same way this comes through.
Okay. I have AirPods. You say we need AirPods?
No.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say, I got you covered on that.
No, the remote.
Yeah. Okay, I initially thought. Oh,
Teresa.
especially certain times of
Yeah.
day.
And I swear.
Much is the, I guess,
A little spin of journey. That's safe for when I tell people how to get started.
And he's also my chairman, so I'm afraid to take your cards anyway. But yeah, so.
Hello in the room and virtually. It's Melanie Bridgeforth here. We're going to get started in about 2 to 3 minutes. We're waiting on Representative Clark, so we have a forum.
If you have a question.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate it.
I mean, that's what I tell people. It's like, it's been-
Yeah.
Oh.
Rachel, are you expecting any more members?
Yes.
Okay, I'll head downstairs.
Yeah.
Is it
No,
like-
I don't think.
Yes. Pop up a box and ask you to hit accept when the web page loads.
There we go.
There we
Hey,
go.
Mike.
Looks like you're connected.
Yeah.
Hey, Representative. Hey, Mike.
Hello,
Great, they can hear us.
can you hear me okay?
It's showing that he's talking, but there's no sound.
And he's
And that's not, that would be on.
We have to just do chat.
I don't think they can hear me.
No, because it's a laptop review that that green box would go around.
Unmute.
Yeah, click that.
Still be this.
Yeah. So my name.
How many do we have to?
Let's see, how. There's 11, so we would need 6.
Hey.
And now he's on.
Yeah, this is Mike Polis. Can you hear me okay?
Should be able to hear.
Guess not. I don't know. Let's
Can't
see.
hear this other person.
I can't hear them. Alternate days.
For the microphone, since I'll be talking to the people there, just for the roll, I mean, it'll just
Oh,
be.
you can sit
Gonna
here.
take
And we're
this.
I'm gonna let Reno say a few words and then I'll call us.
Okay, and if I could just come stand over your shoulder, just to call roll, that'd be it, just so everyone can hear me.
Yes, of course.
So, welcome. I hope everybody can hear me. I think we're having a hard time hearing folks that are joining us virtually, but there's a whole team of people in here helping us figure that out. So we may have to use the chat feature or do some text messages or however we can communicate. The beauty of hybrid. But I think first and foremost, before we call the meeting to order, we have got to thank our friends at Shift for hosting us today. And I'm so excited that we've got a member of the executive leadership team with us today. And I'm going to read a quick bio because it has to be read. Rita.
Oh, thank you.
Yes, it
Let's do
just
it.
must. So we're so excited to have Rena Hurst, who is the Chief Business Officer at Shift, leading the company's business development all the way to innovation teams. In her role, Rena sparks connections by delivering an easy-to-shop digital site, launching innovative partnerships, and building creative strategies alongside retailers to continually meet their unique needs for success. She is also the executive sponsor of the company's AAPI Employee Resource Group, which leads cultural programming, partnerships, and employee development for the AAPI community. Rena joined the company in 2020, bringing a decade
Like this, right?
of national retail experience to Shift. At Target, she had held various leadership roles. Earlier this year, super excited, Rena was honored by the Progressive Grocer named as one of the top 2022 top women in grocery awards. She received her MBA from Georgetown University and her PS from Virginia Tech. She is passionate about investing in community and economic opportunity for women and is a proud new board member of Women's Foundation of Alabama. Frida, thank you for having us.
Gosh. Melody, it's working.
Is the green light on?
No.
Just hold down the power button.
So it's
Yep, got it. Can you all hear me?
You'll probably have
Okay.
to put it closer to you. The microphone.
Okay, well, it's always nice to hear your bio read to you, so thank you, Melanie. I think of all of those things, I'm most excited about my new board seat with the Women's Foundation of Alabama. So this feels like a great moment to be joining the board, kicking off this amazing task force here today. So I just wanted to, first of all, thank you all for being here. Thank you for using our space, because we need more people to come in and use our space. You're welcome anytime. And thank you for the great work you're doing in this area. Based on my role, but more importantly as a mom. These are, all the things you're addressing are things that matter a lot to me. I have a 10-year-old daughter who wants to be a CEO, and the odds are against her. I mean, she has the brains to do it, but the odds are against her. And so every step we can take in our community, as a state, in the country, to advance education, employment, wage gap opportunities for women is so incredibly important. And I want to share with you a few things SHIP's doing in this space, because this is an area that's very important to us as a company. Our new CEO, Kamau Witherspoon, has made a commitment to being the most diverse tech company by 2025. It's a pretty big, bold statement to make. We're starting to make big progress towards that. And I look across the executive team at SHIP, 67% are women, 79% are racially diverse. So it starts at the top, but it needs to go all the way through, from how we show up as executives, how we hire and support our teams, and the programming we put in place to make sure that we can, not only just start at the top, but take it all the way down to the bottom. So a couple ways we're doing that, a couple big partners we have in this space. Pivot Tech. We've created programs to recruit diverse entry-level folks into tech. So in the past year alone, hundreds of new, young, right out of college, diverse team members coming and joining SHIP in game changing. We've partnered with, I'm going to look at my notes here, a couple others here. Guild Education, ensuring we offer debt-free tuition coverage to all team members. We have some really good maternity and paternity leave policies that I wish I had access to when I was raising my children. But we've been able to offer that and extend that, and it goes beyond just women. Education, things like education, access to healthcare, it's all a step in the right direction. It's all really important, but we know we have work to do. We're excited to work with you, partner with you, and continue to support the great work that this committee here is here to do. So I just wanted to say thank you on behalf of my family and the state of Alabama and SHIP. We thank you for all that you're doing, and I look forward to staying connected to this work, helping progress this work, and working with Melanie in this great work to continue to take things further. So thank you.
Thank you, Rena. Thank you so much, Rena. And again, thank you to the awesome SHIP team and our team at the Women's Foundation of Alabama for bringing all of this together. So with that, we're going to call the meeting to order, and I'm going to have Mary Ruth call the roll.
Ms. Bridgeport,
Present.
Representative Clark, Ms. Foster.
Here.
Ms. Key,
Present.
Representative Lover. And I see him on the screen. Mr. Pellis, I see him on the screen as well. Dr. Warwick. Dr. Woodford.
Here.
Representative Witt. Dr. Yates.
Present.
I have a quorum, ma'am.
Oh, thank you so much, Mary Ruth. And just while I'm at it, let's thank Mary Ruth with a hand. Everything you've done to support us in executing the mission of this task force. And you too, Ashley, I see you. We're so appreciative of your support and expertise at the table. So greatly appreciate our team members at the Alabama Legislature. So I'm going to start today's meeting exactly how we began, with data. And so I pulled this right from the House Joint Resolution that created the task force. The wage gap for women in Alabama is larger than for women in the United States overall. At the current rate, women in Alabama will not reach pay equity until 2089. In other words, a woman born today will be 67 years old when pay equity is reached in our state. Paying employed single women the same amount as comparable men could reduce the state's poverty rate by half. More than 74% of families in Alabama rely on a female breadwinner in their households. So the legislature itself made the case for what was to come and for our work. And we're so happy to have Jenna and Representative Clark joining us. We went ahead and got started, ladies, and we're going to keep on moving. Very early on, we labeled, and I labeled this bunch, think and do tank. And you have done both. We've been doing a lot of thinking and a lot of doing. And so dating back from our time to August, today's meeting is really a culmination of all of those efforts. And we are eternally grateful for each of you for showing up. I know you have actual day jobs that you do. And so we're so appreciative for the time that you invested. More importantly, the women of Alabama are appreciative of the work, the time that you invested. So this is our last meeting. Are we going to celebrate? That means y'all are sad. You don't want this to be the last. We can keep going. But this is officially our last meeting, and everything that we have been working for culminates in today's conversation. And so I'm actually going to turn it over. Everybody's seen everything we're about to go over and has weighed in via email and or phone calls. But we thought it would just be really important, particularly because we've had 60 plus key stakeholders following us on this journey since August. We've had more than 12 articles written in newspapers around the work that you all have been doing. So you have been followed and covered extensively. So we want to be sure for the public's vantage point that we do have a sort of outward conversation about this. But thank you all for your emails, for your texts, for your calls leading up to this point. And we're so excited to be joined today by folks who are really following the work of the task force. So with that, Dr. Blakely O'Connor on our team is going to walk through at a very high level the final recommendations that we've been all working through over the past few weeks. And then after that, we will move into some conversation and then a vote, and then we will officially be done. Dr. O'Connor?
Thank you so much, Melanie. So it has been a pleasure and an honor to support this task force and its subcommittees in researching, synthesizing, and prioritizing evidence-based policies to help close the gender wage gap and address barriers to workforce participation for women in Alabama. As Melanie mentioned, the task force has heard from leading experts about the status of the gender wage gap, as well as workforce participation dynamics in Alabama, and has identified the following key findings. Alabama's gender wage gap is one of the largest in the country. On average, women in Alabama are paid only 67 cents for every dollar that a man is paid. Unfortunately, this disparity is even worse for Black and Hispanic women who are paid 52 cents and 42 cents for every dollar a white man earns. These gender and racial wage gaps are a result of several structural and systemic factors, including occupational segregation, low female workforce participation, the motherhood penalty, and the lasting impact of past discriminatory business practices. In addition, the labor force participation rate of women in Alabama is one of the lowest in the Southeast, where 52% of women of working age participate in the paid labor force. Lastly, access to quality, affordable childcare is an essential aspect to a healthy and productive workforce. And this is particularly important for women who are more likely to step back from the workforce to shoulder their family responsibilities. Taking these key findings into account, the final recommendations of the task force are organized based on their impact. First, to strengthen equal pay protections, to invest in childcare to support and grow Alabama's workforce, and to strengthen the workforce development pipeline for women and girls. The Wages Subcommittee focused on policies and recommendations to strengthen equal pay protections and to help close the wage gap. Their first recommendation is to prohibit employers and third parties from requesting pay history from job applicants. In other words, this is a salary history ban. While asking job applicants about their past wage history may seem innocuous on the surface, this practice could be potentially harmful and have unintended consequences that can relegate women to lower pay. Research shows that instituting salary history bans, which have been implemented in 17 other states, can help close the gender wage gap and boost salaries for people starting a new job, particularly for women and people of color. Their second recommendation is to incentivize equal pay audits by creating a good faith defense to litigation for the Clark Figures Equal Pay Act. Equal pay audits can be important tools for companies to help identify pay disparities and opportunities to improve pay equity. Of course, is that
That's much better.
a little bit better? Awesome. To incentivize Alabama's companies to conduct pay audits, the task force recommends creating a good faith defense to litigation for the Clark Figures Equal Pay Act. This type of good faith defense would allow a recent equal pay audit conducted by an independent third party with proof of corrective action if necessary to lessen the damages brought forth in wage disparity cases. Moving on to the Child Care Subcommittee, they focused on recommendations that would increase access to affordable.
If we could, hold on. I'm gonna take it to the side piece. Right.
Would you like to pause here for questions?
Go ahead. Yes.
Excellent.
Here, I gotta be in my ear. Okay. Thank you. I appreciate it. We take each section by section, and so we'll let you move on to the next one. Any thoughts or questions? So we capture the essence of what the recommendations were from the task force on this one. Everybody feel good about it?
Well, yeah, I just want to quickly go back, if we could look at the key findings.
Okay.
Let's look at the key findings. Said the gender wage gap in Alabama as a result of several structural and systemic factors, including occupational segregation, discriminatory business practices, and low labor force participation. Is that not a broad stroke using discriminatory business practices? All businesses are discriminatory.
So, how about this, Representative, do you have language that you would recommend to maybe tighten it a little bit?
Well, I could do that. I don't have it yet.
Yeah.
I just thought that was a very broad stroke with all businesses, and it's my dad is a business owner. I look at his small business and I truly have trouble with that.
Yeah.
That all businesses, as I read it.
Mm-hmm. So I definitely think as it's written, probably not refer to all businesses.
Yeah, that's not, thank you, Melanie, and Representative Wood, thank you. I've owned small businesses, and so I did not take that personally. I think it was a general statement, but let me look, what page?
That was on the key findings.
6.
As examples of what might contribute to the wage gap.
And it seems to me this is just saying it's a problem if there are discriminatory business practices. It's not, it's like adjective. So, what's the impact of past discriminatory business practices? If the business practices were not discriminatory, then it wouldn't be a problem, according to this sentence from our read of it.
I just thought that was a very broad statement.
But I'm afraid it's a true statement. Is there a word we can add there, an adjective that Because we certainly don't want to insult those businesses that are doing the right thing.
Would it
They're
be-
not the target.
Would it be more palatable if it said, something like the lasting impact of discriminatory practices within some businesses?
Qualify with the word some. Or get rid of business and just say discriminatory practices, which can happen. How about that? Getting rid of the word business.
Yeah.
Okay. Regardless of where those discriminatory practices happen. Okay.
Representative Ware, are you okay with that?
Yeah, I just want to make sure that's clear.
I think if we're gonna do that, we need to also change that on page 4. Because I think it actually raised a similar issue with the first draft, but and the original language from the last draft has in bullet 2, discriminatory business practice. I think that the way the language is in this on page 6 is more limiting than page 4. But I'm just gonna try to bring up some data.
Jenna, where are you on page 6, just so we can.
Okay, so the executive summary on page 4, second bullet, the
And then the
gender,
second paragraph of page 6.
Got it.
right, well,
Third
it's
line.
in 2 places. So first of all, under executive summary, bullet number 2, the gender wage gap in Alabama is the result of several structural and systemic factors, including occupational segregation, discriminatory business practices, and low labor force participation among women. That's modified on page 6, in my opinion, limited to past practices, past discriminatory business practices. To me, that's more limiting on page 6. I agree with the issue that I raised was if these are going to be key findings, where is the support for that particular comment? Now, I also know that, and I believe this to be the case, and I think I raised this during one of our meetings, as somebody who represents employers, my experience with the application of the Equal Pay Act is that businesses don't, in my experience, intentionally discriminate against people. In my experience, they set somebody's pay a lot of based upon what their prior pay history was, which is what the salary band is designed to prevent. And the only other way I can liken it to is women's salary, if it is in the past has been lower, they're not being paid based upon the market. And we want people's pay to be based upon the market, not that they're getting a deal on a woman. They're not getting a woman's labor on sale. They're getting it based upon the market. So I think that there may have been some discriminatory practices, but I also want to highlight that in my experience, it's not intentional. It's when if they can see somebody's pay history and somebody's paid under what the market is for business reasons, they're going to want to pay what's under the market.
So Jenna, in all of that, what are you suggesting to get rid of the words of past?
Well, I didn't have as much heartburn with the way it is modified on page 6 because I do believe there can be a lasting impact of past business practices that can be discriminatory. I don't want to, because I think sometimes, which is another reason why we've recommended a pay audit as a check and balance. so that if somebody is being paid under the market, the employer has the opportunity to fix that based upon the market, which is what an equal pay audit would do.
Let me give an example, and this is something that happened and I can talk about the situation because I think most of the people who were involved, at least in administration at the newspaper, which was my first full-time job, Mobile Press Register in Mobile, I came just after a wage discrimination case had been a woman filed suit. She went to the labor department because all of the women in the newsroom were making less and working harder, I might add, but making less than their male counterparts. I mean, it was intentional. Someone asked me if that had happened to me and if that was the reason why I introduced the Equal Pay Act. The answer is no. But when I got there, the newsroom was still buzzing. The women were happy. The woman who filed the lawsuit, I think, left because she just didn't think it was a good place for her to be, but she won the battle, thank goodness. And so it benefited people like me who came along years, after she filed suit against the newspaper. It was intentional. It was intentional. There was a feeling that women did not need as much pay as men.
I want to say to Representative Lovern in the chat said, like adding some or language that is not accusatory to all businesses.
Sure.
So echo.
Well, and I think it bears mentioning too that it's not just isolated to businesses, it's also academia.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Would you agree with that?
Yes.
Especially in the tech fields.
Yes.
I've talked with many professors at UAH that had serious ceilings because of their sex.
Yes.
So just leaving out the word business to me, I think solves the problem, but that's just me.
Yes.
And I also want to add coming from a slightly different field, that when talking about discrimination, I include both explicit and implicit, direct and indirect. And so I think sometimes, or at least what I'm hearing from people are sort of taking the like direct and intentional discrimination from the word discrimination, but sometimes discrimination can happen even if someone did not intend to do it.
Yeah. Implicit.
Implicit.
Yeah. So do you feel
generally good about striking through business? Because I know that the task force in no way wants to insinuate that discriminatory practices against women, people of color, haven't created some of the issues that we are facing today. They are real, they continue, and so part of our work is to help figure out how to recommend policy changes for them. So are we good with striking through businesses and maybe even adding the word some? I think we can, okay.
Discriminatory practices.
Okay. And we will send around a version of that change. You can betcha. That'll be included.
I would offer
Yes.
as key findings, one of the resources that can be helpful is the EEOC does compile statistics by state as to the number of EEOC charges filed. And so I'm just pulling up Alabama's. So in Alabama, total number of EEOC charges for fiscal year 2021 was 1,659. Out of those charges for the Equal Pay Act, there were 21 for FY21, representing a total of 1.3% of charges, but that doesn't necessarily capture all of the charges because that is particular for what we're discussing. If you look at the number of race discrimination charges filed in Alabama, there were 768 or 3.5% for FY21. And for gender, there were, sorry, 550, which for the total 33.2%. So if you're looking for key findings, that resource may be.
And so Jenna, those were complaints filed, right? Does it
Correct.
give statistics on the outcome?
It does not say the outcome. The EEOC does provide statistics on the amount that the EEOC recovers in a particular year. I don't think they break that down by state. So these are just the number of charges. These are, which are like complaints filed to the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission alleging, and they break them down based upon the different, whether it's national origin, religion, Americans with Disabilities Act. But those are, they may be helpful with respect to.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I do not want to miss our friends in the chat. Do we have anything else from our folks that are participating virtually? Great. Just for the record, these two recommendations are sound for this task force. There is a little bit of discussion around maybe tightening some of the language in the findings, key findings. Does that sound right?
Can I ask a clarifying
Yes.
question? I just have a clarifying question, Dr. O'Connor, on the key finding about wage gap for Black women and Hispanic women. You said 42 cents for Hispanic, but the document reads 41, and I just wanted to see which was correct.
I can go back and review the source research for that. And make sure that we have the final.
Okay, 'cause it says 41 here, but you said 42, so I didn't know if I was looking in the wrong place or if that's a change.
I'll double check to make sure. I can't remember off the top which one is correct.
She's too young for that, isn't she?
All
What are
right.
you gonna do when you get mine?
All right. I think we are, let that door close, and then Blakely, we're going to turn it back over to you. Oh, I'm sorry. Anything else about this particular set of recommendations? Great. Well, thanks, everybody. Blakely?
Excellent. Moving on to the recommendations brought forth by the Child Care Subcommittee. They focused on recommendations that would increase access to affordable quality childcare throughout the state and support and grow Alabama's workforce. According to the Federal Reserve Bank of Atlanta, who the task force heard from, family responsibility and childcare are leading factors that contribute to the underutilization of women in the workforce in Alabama. Their first recommendation is to create tax incentives to increase the supply and affordability of quality childcare in Alabama. The recommended tax incentives presented are based on those pioneered by Louisiana that have been proven to have a positive impact on the affordability, availability, and quality of childcare. These tax credits, tax credits for all stakeholders in the childcare ecosystem, including tax credits for families, tax credits for childcare providers, tax credits for childcare teachers and directors, as well as tax credits for businesses that provide or support childcare programs. The second recommendation of the subcommittee is to utilize all available federal funding, including temporary COVID relief, to support access to childcare. Alabama has a limited time opportunity to direct federal funds from COVID relief to support childcare, whose workforce and customers, including working parents and their children, who are pandemic. Their third recommendation is the childcare supply gap, such as a revolving fund or startup grants for childcare facilities and capital expenses. Startup costs and capital expenses are a major barrier for aspiring childcare business owners hoping to launch or expand their capacity for childcare. Examples like providing no interest loans or startup grants for capital expenses would provide a much needed incentive for childcare providers to become licensed and to expand their capacity for care. Their final recommendation is to prioritize childcare in Alabama's future workforce policy planning by creating an intra-agency council on workforce and childcare. Because childcare is a multi-sector problem, facilitate collaboration to address Alabama's complex childcare needs, and an interagency council on childcare and the workforce should be formed to bring together the state agencies as well as representatives from employers, childcare providers, and childcare resource and referral agencies.
Thank you, Blakely. Any further discussion on the recommendations around childcare? Do these reflect what we've been having conversations about? They're very robust. In the chat. Okay. Very good. All right. We'll move on to the next set of recommendations later.
Education and Training Subcommittee focused on ways to strengthen the workforce development pipeline for women and girls. To increase the number of women in the workforce and address occupational segregation, Alabama must invest in thoughtful interventions across the lifespan that disrupt traditional gender stereotypes and remove barriers to accessing quality high-wage jobs. As we discussed in the last meeting, fortunately, there's no shortage of workforce development organizations, programs, and initiatives taking place throughout the state. However, awareness of and access to these education and training resources poses a challenge and reduces the reach and impact for those who benefit most. Coordination, cooperation, and communication within and across such initiatives could be improved to ensure that all Alabamians have equal access to the equal opportunity to access the education and training necessary to secure sustainable employment. The first recommendation of the Education and Training Subcommittee is to add a representative to the Alabama Workforce Council to focus on gender dynamics in workforce development. Alabama Works and Success Plus have outlined a structured path for our state to add credentialed workers to the workforce and have created the organizational infrastructure to support workforce developments in all regions in the state. Adding a representative to focus on gender dynamics in the workforce, like the gender pay gap, labor force participation of women, occupational segregation and childcare. This would ensure that the important work of this task force continues on in the future and continues to have a positive impact on workforce development. This group also recommends increasing funding for early intervention and workforce development programs across the lifespan, such as early intervention programs that expose and prepare girls for careers in STEM, apprenticeship programs and earn and learn pathways, as well as funding for workforce navigators and career coaches.
Thank you, Blakely. I'll open this one up for some conversation as well. From our friends virtually as well, anything in the chat.
Ashley shared, she had done some digging for us on funding for, oh, sorry. I always feel like everybody can always hear me. I'm one of those. So Ashley did some research for us on STEM funding for girls in the current state budgets and did not find a specific earmark, but it was directed to a program called STEM Scale Up that focuses on historically underserved learners, but not specific for young girls or women.
Can she tell how much that was funded? No,
There wasn't an
there
earmark.
wasn't. Okay.
Thank you, Ashley.
I'm not sure how that changes or if that changes the recommendation. We're not increasing funding, we're kind of just needed to be funded.
Yes.
Yeah. Which I guess is an increase technically from 0 to.
From nothing to something, yes.
Maybe we'll leave it as is. Thank you, Ashley. Any other feedback on this particular set of recommendations? Okay, so then I'm going to ask, and it's really up to you all, and Mary Ruth is going to help me stay within the lines of what's legal and ethical and all those things, but I don't know, are you all comfortable taking a vote without seeing the changes Or do you feel like the changes that we discussed are so minimal in nature that we can move forward with voting on the recommendations pending, as amended? Yeah. Up to you all. Is that allowed?
Because this is not actually something that is a law that will take effect. It is just agreeing to this recommendation. Yes, it is fine just to go on and accept the recommendation. You can just do it as all the voice buttons.
Okay. I'm gonna open it up one more time as you all peel back through. Is there anything else that we wanna hone in on? Any edits? Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I need to be consistent. Page 12 conclusions, we're gonna take out business in the other places it needs to be reviewed.
Yeah, so we'll do a replace all there. Got it. Got it. We're just gonna give folks just a minute more to thumb through and see if there's anything else that's jumping out at you. Anything from my friends in the chat, Rachel? Okay. Representative?
I'm sorry, Ms. Bridgeforth, I was just gonna say also, if you want to send this document around where you were asking for signatures,
Yeah.
that can be included when I turn in the document.
We're planning on it.
You are, okay, so you're good.
Thank you, Mary.
I just want to quickly add that I'm just back from the CSG Council of State Government annual meeting. Very informative sessions there, and there was one on Kentucky's Employee Child Care Assistance Partnership. So the representative member of the Kentucky Assembly who introduced that legislation was there, along with someone from the Kentucky State Chamber of Commerce. Very good presentation, and as I listened to the ladies, and the one thing that I learned there that I had not read previously was that there's a pilot program. So, but I just have no doubt that it's going to continue to be funded in future years. The legislation was passed just this year, April of 2022. But it just, the room was packed. There was that much interest. That doesn't give you a whole lot of perspective about how many people were in the room, but the room was packed. There was a lot of interest, a lot of good questions were asked. And I am so hopeful that we will pass legislation to come up with a similar program, be it pilot in first year or a permanent program. I think this will do a lot to increase the number of women in the workforce.
Going back to my comment earlier about wage disparity for Black and Hispanic women, in our key findings, it notes 52 cents and 41 cents, and in the resolution, it notes 58.5 and 48.8, but that's as of a specific date. So I think it's fine that the numbers change, but we may, in our numbers, may want to reference what the date is so that it's clear.
Thank you.
That's a good point, the date and also the source, because it will vary from
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true.
Okay. And then there was just the other comment by Dr. Yates to verify the 41 or 42%. And about 3 changes.
All of us are not mandatory.
Correct. They're not mandatory.
How many businesses would you take? What is the size limit that you would take? To think?
Representative Whitney,
Yeah, yeah.
the mic.
So what size business are you looking at? I guess that utilizes these pay audits. That would be my question as well.
It's a great question. Typically with a pay audit, you're looking at people who are similarly situated. So you would need to have somebody who is in the same job in order to do a true pay audit. So we didn't talk necessarily about the number of employees that that happens in a lot of employment statutes where they tie it to, so Title VII is tied to 15 employees, COBRA is 50, and FMLA is 50 employees. So it just, for a true, I don't think that if you are a very small business, if you have 5 employees, I think it's going to be hard to do equal pay. You may not have a business owner and then 4 people who are the same job. But I think it's just going to, some of that's just going to depend on the circumstances.
But it is indeed voluntary.
It is voluntary. It is a good faith defense. It is not something that is mandated.
Okay.
Council, good question. Anything else? Anything in the chat? I don't want to forget our friends in the chat.
Representative Lever was just clarifying that we're removing, wanted to better understand what we were removing in terms of business and discriminatory practices, so clarify. Great, perfect.
Thank you, Representative. All right, well, I'm going to entertain a motion here, and we're going to move this thing through the process of a vote.
I move that we vote on this set of recommendations. I move that we vote on this set of recommendations.
Who seconded, I'm sorry? Thank you.
Okay, it's a motion and properly second. All in favor?
Aye.
Oh, yes. Friends in the chat. Maybe raise your hand. Oh, okay. Opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, ayes have it. Final recommendations as amended. We will get those to you. So our next steps are to make these amendments that we discussed, and our team has captured those. We're going to get this submitted to the legislature probably in the next week, but definitely by December 31st. And is there anything else, Blakely or Rachel, that I'm missing? So then I'll close with just a reminder, some of the work that Women's Foundation Alabama did that inspired some of this thinking in our Clearing the Path report we were actually looking at, and it was the state's first economic impact study on women, which is important. I always say what gets measured gets changed. And up until this year, there had never been a report on what's happening in the workforce as it relates to women. So we're very proud of that work. But I want you to remember that the work that you've done could create a reality where achieving pay parity in Alabama is estimated to create 59,000 new jobs and grow the state's economy by $22 billion. So there's a lot at stake, and I hope you feel that your voice was heard throughout this process. We certainly appreciate your expertise and those experts, our subject matter experts who also supported us along this journey. And we look forward to seeing how these progress with our members of the legislature. And with that, we are adjourned. Thank you.
May I say something
Yes,
really quick?
Representative Clark.
We are adjourned, but quick. So I'd just like to also thank every one of you for serving on this Alabama Workforce and Wage Gap Task Force. I'd like to thank the appointing authorities, Governor Kay Ivey, I think had 3 appointments, the Senate Pro Tem, the Speaker, the Minority Leader in the Senate and the House, AAUW, the American Association of University Women, SHRM, Mike, the Society of Human Resource Management, and of course the Women's Foundation. We didn't get out of the starting block quite as quickly as I had hoped we would, and so here we are at Christmas time at the table. But I consider this a gift, and I thank you all for this gift. You brought your expertise, your talent, your time, and even your treasures, because there was no pay involved, not even mileage. So thank you for your in-kind service. with my colleagues, with the help of my colleagues, Andy Witt and Representative Andy Witt and Representative Joe Lovren, I hope that, that we can agree on who's gonna introduce legislation. It might be me. We're gonna strategize, aren't we, Representative Witt?
That's correct.
It may be that he introduces something. We have to be thoughtful. We have to be strategic. I don't know if you all realize that annually, hundreds, and I think the number typically exceeds 1,000 bills that get introduced every regular session. About a third of those pass every year. We always run out of time before we get bills, many of the bills worthy even, passed. I hope that we will have an opportunity to get at least one of these recommendations passed during the 2023 session, and that we'll keep pushing to get all of the recommendations eventually passed. I just want you to know that it takes time. Please don't consider us a failure if we don't get it all done in 1 year. Just keep lifting us up, praying that these recommendations will come to be. You too, like me, you already had a vested interest in the Equal Pay Act. Now you have an extra special vested interest because of the recommendations that we have compiled together as a task force. So thank you all for all the help that you provided. I'd like to, who's retired? Oh, Dr. Warren.
She's not here.
Okay, all right, so I don't know if you all know, Dr. Warren is retiring. I was gonna congratulate her. Congratulations wherever you are. Dr. Warren on your retirement. And just to all of us gathered here, virtually and in person, I'd just like to wish you all a Merry Christmas and a prosperous New Year. Thank you all so much. It's been a pleasure to serve with you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now we stand in adjournment. Thank you, Representative.